Good morning, D-Day Squadron. Debbie Sham and Dan Halpern with you for your weather briefing for Monday morning, May 20th. Our current surface analysis showing that the primary weather feature today will be an area of low pressure across the North Atlantic, and our primary hazard concern will be the threat of icing along our flights today from Goose Bay to Narsarsuaq and onward to Reykjavik. There's also a stationary front located across Iceland this morning, which could serve as the focus for some precipitation and low ceilings throughout the day today. As we look at the first light visible satellite images across the North Atlantic, we see that there is considerable cloud cover across much of the area, and we can see the sun rising there across the North Atlantic here this morning. Looking at the infrared satellite image, we see a large area of cloudiness associated with our mid-latitude cyclone. On the western edge of this cloud shield between Goose Bay and Narsarsuaq, the cloud tops are a bit lower compared to a more direct line from Goose Bay to Narsarsuaq. So our recommendation today is going to be, after departure from Goose Bay, to head north to about 60 to 62 degrees north and then arc around the western edge of that cloud shield to help minimize the potential for icing conditions. There is also some cloud cover between Narsarsuaq and Reykjavik. Again, the recommendation here would be to fly at roughly about 62 degrees north to stay in an area where the cloud tops are lower to again minimize the icing potential throughout the day today. Your current iceberg and sea ice analysis showing that there are icebergs present to the east-northeast of Goose Bay. Another benefit of heading north from Goose Bay and then arcing around the western edge of the cloud shield is that you would be flying over an area where no icebergs are analyzed. And then as we look at the sea state, as we look at the past few forecast cycles for the sea state here, we find that the forecast wave heights are generally in the 6 to 10 foot range along the route of flight. And this is true throughout the morning hours, throughout the daytime today, and into Tuesday morning. Your freezing levels, initially the freezing level down near the surface here in Goose Bay and over at Narsarsuaq. As we go closer to departure time, we see that those freezing levels will begin to lift throughout the day. So between the surface and 5,000 feet from Goose Bay over to Narsarsuaq and then down near the surface at Narsarsuaq. And then freezing levels generally between the surface and 5,000 feet from Narsarsuaq over to Reykjavik, although across Iceland by this evening the forecast freezing levels are forecast to be right around 5,000 feet. As we go through the overnight hours and then into the day on Tuesday, again we find freezing levels generally between the surface and 5,000 feet, closer to the surface at Narsarsuaq, around 5,000 feet in the Reykjavik vicinity. Your forecast temperatures at 5,000 feet, generally in the 20s throughout the day today and also throughout the day on Tuesday. The exception being possibly some lower 30s just west of and in the vicinity of Iceland. And at 10,000 feet, temperatures generally in the teens across both segments from Goose Bay to Narsarsuaq and then from Narsarsuaq over to Reykjavik. And this will be true throughout the day on Tuesday as well. Your icing potential at 5,000 feet. So again, we have a large area of enhanced moisture content from Goose Bay all the way over to Reykjavik today. And then again, our freezing levels are below 5,000 feet here. So the potential for icing at 5,000 feet does exist and will persist throughout the day on Monday. As we head into Tuesday, conditions start to dry out across the North Atlantic from Goose Bay to Narsarsuaq. But still some enhanced moisture over Goose Bay by Tuesday morning. And then over in Iceland, we find throughout the day Tuesday that the enhanced moisture content remains, but temperatures, the freezing levels should be at or above 5,000 feet. At 10,000 feet, so again, here we are close to departure time. Again, temperatures well below freezing here. We're recommending that you fly north to about 60 to 62 degrees latitude, and that as you arc toward Narsisuik, again, we're thinking that this will keep you on near the western edge of the cloud shield associated with this mid-latitude cyclone, and should minimize your potential for icing encounters. As we go throughout the day, on Monday and then get into Monday evening, we find that there are icing conditions still a possibility between Narsisuik and Reykjavik. On the segment between Narsisuik and Reykjavik, again, we're recommending that you fly at about 62 degrees north. This again should keep you over the area of relatively lower cloud tops. So we're making the assumption that you're flying around 10,000 feet today. So if you fly around 62 degrees north, that should keep you generally in the area of lower cloud tops. Although as you approach Iceland, there are some bands of higher cloud tops. So the recommended action would be as you near Iceland, and once you start encountering those higher cloud tops, to descend quickly below the freezing level, which again should be around 5,000 feet, to minimize your icing potential as you get into the vicinity of Iceland. Throughout the day on Tuesday, again, conditions will begin to dry out across the North Atlantic, but still quite a bit of moisture over Goose Bay, and then still a fair amount of moisture over Iceland as well throughout Tuesday afternoon. So the Atlantic itself looking a little bit drier, but our origin and destination spots still dealing with the icing threat at 10,000 feet. Your current weather depiction chart shows MVFR conditions across Goose Bay, VFR conditions across Narsisuik, and IFR conditions across Reykjavik. As we go throughout the day, we find that conditions at Goose Bay will be borderline IFR or low IFR at times this morning, and then as we go forward into the afternoon hours, Narsisuik still looking okay. And then as we go into the evening hours, as we get into in toward Iceland, we're looking at the potential for some IFR conditions near Iceland as well. And into the overnight hours, potentially conditions degrading around Goose Bay. Turbulence, low-level turbulence does not appear to be an issue today throughout the next 24 hours, so we're not expecting much in the way of low-level turbulence. And then volcanic ash is also not in the forecast throughout the next 18 hours. Your forecast winds at 5,000 feet show a fairly strong headwind along the segment from Goose Bay to Narsisuik, and then some relatively weaker winds between Narsisuik and Iceland. And this general pattern will be true throughout the day on Tuesday as well. If we go to 10,000 feet, we find that the winds between Goose Bay and Narsisuik are a bit weaker. We also find that the other added benefit of going north from Goose Bay to about 60 to 62 degrees north as you arc around into Narsisuik is that would also put you in an area of relatively lighter headwinds. So in addition to minimizing your icing potential, you should have slightly more favorable winds, but they will be headwinds still from Goose Bay to Narsisuik today. And then again, relatively lighter winds from Narsisuik over to Reykjavik. And this pattern pretty much continues throughout the day Tuesday because our area of low pressure will still be in the general vicinity of the North Atlantic throughout the day on Tuesday as well. Looking at your surface winds at Goose Bay this morning, winds generally out of the north, so favoring runway 34 for departure this morning. As we go throughout the day on Monday and then get into early Tuesday morning, for those of you planning to depart on Tuesday, the winds shift to more of an onshore component, generally favoring runway 08. Over in the vicinity of Narsisuik, by midday on Monday, we're expecting winds to have an onshore component here, generally out of the west-southwest, favoring runway 24. And that those conditions should continue through the late afternoon into the early evening hours on Monday. And then by Tuesday, midday, looks like the winds will generally be fairly light and variable on Tuesday midday at Narsisuik. Your surface winds in Greenland throughout the midday hours on Monday. Generally, for your alternates here, the winds generally have an onshore component to them along the west coast, and they are relatively lighter than the wind speeds that are forecast for your east coast alternates. This pattern is going to pretty much remain the same throughout the day Monday and into the day on Tuesday as well. And then in Reykjavik, as we go into the late afternoon, evening hours here in Reykjavik, winds should generally be light and variable here. And as we go into the overnight hours and then into Tuesday, we find that again, winds should be fairly light and potentially variable on Tuesday, late afternoon, early evening in Reykjavik also. So your METARs and TAFs, your forecast weather for departure time out of Goose Bay, showing that generally we're going to have light and variable winds, should have good visibility. The predominant ceilings will be around 5,000 feet, but temporarily or intermittently we could see ceilings lowering to about 1,200 feet. And then from starting at 12Z, there is the chance for light rain showers in the area with a ceiling of 2,500 feet. We don't have a TAF yet for Narsisuik, but their METAR at the time of this briefing showed calm winds, good visibility, and no cloud cover. We will update you with the TAF as soon as one is issued. And then in Reykjavik, our concern here is going to be the potential for precipitation throughout the day today, and also some low ceilings. So by 12Z today, the ceilings forecast to generally be about 2,500 feet. And then our alternate locations here on the west coast of Greenland, Bravo, Golf, Sierra, Foxtrot, showing generally light and variable winds, good visibility, the potential for ceilings to develop around 7,000 feet intermittently throughout the day on Monday. And then your alternate in Iceland for Keflavik here, showing, again, the potential concern here is some precipitation and then some low ceilings. So by 12Z this morning, the ceilings forecast to be around 2,200 feet at Keflavik as well. So that is the forecast conditions for today. We will have an updated briefing for you for Tuesday's outlook later this afternoon. Have a safe flight.